Jin Kim stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of New Earth International School. Her black hair was messy again, and her school uniform was wrinkled. She tried to fix both, but it was no use. The morning bell would ring in 5 minutes, and she couldn't be late to class again. Just another day, she whispered to herself, adjusting her backpack. Just get through another day. The hallways of New Earth International were wide and tall, built to accommodate students of all shapes and sizes. Jin walked past a group of towering Meridian students, their blue-tinted skin glowing softly in the morning light. A pair of floating Orbian students zoomed overhead, their crystalline bodies chiming softly as they moved. At 15 years old, Jin was one of only 12 human students in the entire school. Humans were considered one of the younger spacefaring races, having achieved faster-than-light travel just 3 centuries ago. Most alien species had been exploring space for thousands of years before that. Jin reached her classroom and took a deep breath before entering. As usual, Raoul was already there, his scaled skin shifting colors like an angry rainbow. The tall alien boy sat with his friend Vix, whose 4 eyes tracked Jin's every move. "Oh look," Raoul said loudly, "the primitive has arrived." Jin kept her head down and walked to her desk. She could feel her cheeks burning red, which only made things worse. Human emotional displays were considered amusing by many alien species. "I heard humans still need to sleep every day," Vix added with a snicker. "Can you imagine? Wasting a third of your life just lying there." "Please stop," Jin said quietly, pulling out her tablet. "What's wrong?" Raoul leaned closer. "Are you going to leak water from your eyes again?" "What do humans call it? Crying." A sharp pain shot through Jin's head. These headaches had been getting worse lately, especially when she was upset. She pressed her fingers against her temples, trying to make it go away. "Leave her alone," a voice called from the doorway. Do-young Park, Jin's best friend, walked into the classroom. He was human too, tall for his age with kind eyes and a confident stride that Jin wished she had. "Mind your own business, Do-young," Raoul growled, his scales turning a deep red. "Jin is my business," Do-young said, sitting down next to her. "And you're being a jerk." Before Raoul could respond, their teacher entered the room. Mr. Kex was a centaurian, with silver skin and dozens of small tentacles where his hair should be. The tentacles waved gently as he started the morning lesson. "Today we'll continue our discussion of quantum mechanics," Mr. Kex said, bringing up a holographic display. "Specifically, we'll explore the concept of quantum entanglement and its role in modern space travel." Jin sat up straighter. For some reason, quantum physics always caught her attention. While other subjects could be difficult, quantum mechanics just made sense to her, like remembering something she'd known long ago but had forgotten. Mr. Kex drew complex equations in the air with his finger, the numbers and symbols glowing blue. "Can anyone tell me why quantum entanglement is crucial for faster-than-light communication?" Without thinking, Jin raised her hand. Raoul and Vix exchanged surprised looks. "Yes, Ms. Kim. Quantum entanglement allows for instantaneous information transfer between 2 points, regardless of distance," Jin said. "By manipulating one particle, you affect its entangled pair immediately. The quantum communication network uses artificial entanglement fields to create stable channels for faster-than-light data transmission." The room went quiet. Mr. Kex's tentacles curled in surprise. "That's exactly right, Ms. Kim. In fact, you've explained it better than I was going to. Have you studied this before?" Jin shook her head. "No, sir. It just makes sense to me." "Impossible," Raoul muttered. She must have cheated somehow. The pain in Jin's head intensified. For a moment, she saw something strange. A massive starship, its hull covered in strange symbols. The vision disappeared as quickly as it came. "I didn't cheat," Jin said, rubbing her temples. "I just understand it." Well, Mr. Keck said, your understanding is impressive. Now let's continue with today's lesson. The rest of the morning passed slowly. The Jinn tried to focus, but the headache wouldn't go away. During lunch break, she sat with Du Young in their usual spot in the school garden. The artificial sky above them was set to partly cloudy, and soft blue light filtered through the dome. You okay? Du Young asked, sharing his lunch with her. You seem distracted. Just another headache, He-Jin said, picking at her food. And the usual stuff with Rao and Vix. They're idiots, Du Young said firmly. Being older as a species doesn't make them better. Humans have achieved more in 3 centuries than some races have in thousands of years. He-Jin smiled weakly. Thanks, Du Young. I wish I was stronger sometimes, or different. Different how? I don't know. Sometimes I have these strange dreams. I'm somewhere else, someone else, someone important. She laughed. Sounds stupid, right? Do Young looked at her thoughtfully. Not stupid. I have weird dreams too sometimes, like memories that don't belong to me. Before He-Jin could respond, a shadow fell over their table. Ral and Vix stood there, along with 2 other alien students, a tall Meridian named Krell and another scaled student named Zix. Having a primitive picnic? Ral asked, his scales shifting to a mocking purple color. Go away, Ral, Du Young said, standing up. Make me, Ral replied. Oh wait, you can't. Your species is too weak. You know, my ancestors used to rule half the galaxy. What were humans doing then? Living in caves. Another sharp pain shot through He-Jin's head. This time, she saw something clearer. A massive battle in space, thousands of ships firing at each other. She heard voices, commands being shouted. You're wrong, He-Jin said suddenly, standing up. Her voice sounded different, stronger somehow. Humans are not weak. Ral laughed, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Oh, and what makes you say that, little human? Because, He-Jin paused, the words coming from somewhere deep inside her. Because if we were weak, how did we defeat the Nexer Empire? The moment she said it, He-Jin didn't know where the words had come from, but Ral's reaction was shocking. His scales turned pure white, and he stumbled backward as if struck. What did you say? He whispered. I don't know, He-Jin said, the strength leaving her voice. The headache was pounding now. I don't know why I said that. Vix grabbed Ral's arm. Come on, let's go. She's not worth it. The alien students hurried away, leaving He-Jin and Du Young alone. He-Jin sat down heavily, her hands shaking. That was amazing, Du Young said. But what's the Nexer Empire? I've never heard of it. Neither have I, He-Jin admitted. The words just came out. And these visions I keep having. She looked at her hands. Du Young, what's happening to me? Whatever it is, he said, sitting next to her. I'm here to help figure it out. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. During the last period, Principal Kang visited their classroom. She was a tall, elegant woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. He-Jin noticed the principal watching her with unusual interest. After school, He-Jin walked home alone. Du Young had a music lesson, so they'd said goodbye at the school gates. The streets of New Earth City stretched out before her, a marvel of human and alien architecture. Flying vehicles zipped between towering buildings, and holograms advertised products in dozens of languages. At home, He-Jin found a note from her parents. They were working late again at the Xenobiology Research Center. She made herself a simple dinner and sat down to do her homework. As she worked on her quantum mechanics assignment, the numbers and equations flowed naturally. It was like reading a familiar story, even though she'd never studied this material before. She drew diagrams of quantum fields and wrote complex calculations without having to think about them. That night, as He-Jin lay in bed, the visions came again. She saw herself, but not herself, standing on the bridge of a massive starship. She wore a uniform she didn't recognize, and people called her by a different name. She was giving orders, coordinating a battle plan. Hejin sat up in bed, her heart racing. The digital clock showed 3:47 a.m. Her head was pounding again, but this time it was different. This time, she remembered more of the vision. She grabbed her tablet and wrote down everything she could remember. A battle in space. The name Jia Han. Something about a quantum weapon. The Nexer Empire. A final battle. None of it made sense, but it felt real. Too real to be just dreams. Who am I? Hejin whispered to her dark room. Who was I? The stars twinkled through her window, silent and mysterious. Somewhere out there, Hejin knew, were answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask yet. She lay back down, her mind racing with possibilities. Tomorrow would be another day at school, another day of enduring taunts and trying to fit in. But now, something was different. Now, Hejin had a mystery to solve. And somehow, she knew this was just the beginning. As she drifted off to sleep, one last vision came to her. A massive fleet of starships, advancing through space. And at the head of that fleet, a woman stood on her bridge, giving commands that would change the galaxy forever. A woman whose face looked exactly like Hejin's. The vision faded, and Hejin slept. In her dreams, she commanded armies and toppled empires, unaware that every word of it was true. Unaware that very soon, she would remember everything. And when she did, the galaxy would remember too. Because some stories are too big to stay forgotten forever. Some heroes are meant to rise again. And Hejin Kim was about to discover that she was both. 200 years ago, in a different time, Commander Jia Han stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Last Hope. Her black hair was tied back tightly, and her uniform bore the marks of many battles. The ship's view screen showed hundreds of destroyed vessels floating in space, the remains of humanity's latest defeat. Status report. Jia commanded, her voice steady despite their losses. Tae-ho Lee, her chief scientist, looked up from his console. His face was tired but determined. The Nexer fleet destroyed 30% of our ships. We lost the Mars colony, Commander. Earth is all we have left. Jia closed her eyes for a moment. The Nexer Empire had been unstoppable for the past 5 years. They had taken over half the galaxy, destroying or enslaving any species that refused to bow to them. Humans had fought back harder than most, but they were losing. "Show me the casualty numbers," she said. The holographic display lit up with lists of the dead. Too many names. Too many lives lost. Jia had memorized every single one. "Commander," Tae-ho said suddenly, "I might have found something. Remember those ancient ruins we discovered on Titan last month?" Jia walked to his station, the quantum technology site. "I thought it was dead. Not dead. Dormant." Tae-ho's fingers flew over the controls, the symbols on the walls. I finally translated them. They weren't warnings like we thought. They were instructions. The screen showed pictures of the ruins, tall black walls covered in glowing symbols. The civilization that built them had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind technology that no one understood. Instructions for what? Jia asked. "For this." Tae-ho brought up a complex diagram. "It's a weapon, Commander, but not like anything we've ever seen. It doesn't destroy things. It rewrites reality itself." Jia stared at the diagram. "Explain it simply, Tae-ho." "Think of reality like a book," he said. "This weapon can erase words and write new ones. It can change the past, present, and future all at once. The ancient ones built it to fix mistakes in time, but they never used it. They were afraid of its power. And you think we can build it?" Tae-ho nodded. "With the right materials, yes. But Commander, using it would be dangerous. We don't know what changes it might make to reality. We could end up erasing ourselves." Jia looked at the casualty lists again. "We're being erased anyway, Tae-ho." How long to build it? 3 months. Maybe less if we use all our resources. Do it, Jai Yun ordered. This is now humanity's top priority. The next 3 months were a blur of activity. The last hope traveled to hidden bases across the solar system, gathering rare materials. Every scientist in the human fleet worked on the project. They called it Operation Rewrite. The Nexer Empire noticed their activity. Their ships attacked more frequently, trying to find out what the humans were planning. But Jai Yun's fleet fought back with new energy. They had hope now, dangerous hope, but hope nonetheless. 2 months into the project, Jai Yun sat in her private quarters, reading reports. Her door chimed. "Enter," she called. Tahoe walked in, carrying a small black box. "Commander, you need to see this." He placed the box on her desk and opened it. Inside was a small crystal, glowing with soft blue light. "Is that a piece of the weapon?" "Yes." Tahoe picked up the crystal carefully. "We tested it yesterday. Watch." He placed the crystal on the floor and pressed a button on his tablet. The crystal pulsed once, and suddenly there was a cup of coffee on Jai Yun's desk that hadn't been there before. "How did you?" "I rewrote a tiny piece of reality," Tahoe explained. "I made it so you had decided to get coffee 10 minutes ago." The crystal made it true. Jai Yun touched the cup. It was real. The coffee was still hot. "If a small crystal can do this," she said, "what will the full weapon do?" "It could rewrite the entire Nexer Empire out of existence," Tahoe said quietly. "Make it so they never rose to power, never destroyed all those worlds, never killed all those people. But we don't know what else it might change. The universe is complex, Commander. Change one thing, and you change everything." Jai Yun stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars. "Send me all the data. I need to think about this." That night, Jai Yun couldn't sleep. She read everything about the weapon, trying to understand its power. The ancient civilization had built it as a last resort, a way to fix catastrophic mistakes, but they had been too afraid to use it. Were they wiser than us? She wondered aloud, or just more afraid. The next morning, alarms blared throughout the ship. Jai Yun ran to the bridge. "Report," she shouted. "Nexer fleet," her tactical officer yelled. "Biggest one we've ever seen." "They found us, Commander." The view screen showed thousands of Nexer ships approaching. Their purple-black hulls seemed to swallow the starlight. Time to impact. 3 hours at their current speed. Jai Yun turned to Tahoe. "Is the weapon ready?" "Final assembly will take 2 hours," he said. "But, Commander, we haven't tested it fully. Using it now would be." "We don't have a choice," Jai Yun cut him off. "Get it done." The next 2 hours were chaos. Engineers and scientists worked frantically to complete the weapon while the fleet prepared for battle. Jai Yun sent messages to every human ship and colony, telling them to be ready. Finally, Tahoe called from the science lab. "It's ready." Jai Yun ran to the lab. The weapon sat on a pedestal, a sphere of black metal and crystal, covered in the same symbols they had found in the ruins. It hummed with power. "How do we use it?" Jai Yun asked. "Someone has to interface with it directly," Tahoe explained. "Connect their mind to its power. They can then rewrite reality as they choose." "What happens to the person who connects?" Tahoe looked away. "We don't know." Jai Yun nodded. "I'll do it." "Commander, no. Let me." "That's an order, Tahoe." Jai Yun stepped toward the weapon. "How do I connect?" Tahoe showed her how to place her hands on the sphere. "Once connected, you'll see reality as it truly is. All possibilities, all timelines. Choose carefully, Commander." Jai Yun took a deep breath. "If this works, none of this will have happened. The Nexer Empire will never have existed. And if it doesn't work, then humanity goes down fighting, like always." Jai Yun smiled at her old friend. "It's been an honor, Tahoe." She placed her hands on the sphere. Light exploded through her mind. She saw everything at once, every moment in time, every possible future. She saw the Nexar Empire's rise, saw how a single decision thousands of years ago had set them on their path to power. She saw what she needed to change. With all her strength, Jai Yun reached into the fabric of reality itself. She found that single moment, that one decision, and she changed it. Just a small change. One person choosing peace instead of war, mercy instead of vengeance. The universe screamed. Light poured from the weapon, engulfing everything. Jai Yun felt herself being torn apart, her consciousness scattered across time and space. The last thing she heard was Taeho shouting her name. Then everything changed. The new reality settled into place. The Nexar Empire had never risen. Those thousands of destroyed worlds had never burned. Billions of lives had never been lost. But reality had to balance itself. The people who had been part of those events, the ones who had made the biggest changes, couldn't simply disappear. Instead, they were reborn, their souls carried forward through time. They forgot who they had been, forgot the war, the weapon, the sacrifice. But deep inside, those memories waited, ready to wake up when they were needed again. And so, 200 years later, a girl named Hae-Jin Kim sat in her classroom, unaware that she had once saved the galaxy, unaware that the headaches plaguing her were memories trying to break free, unaware that her bullies were also reborn souls, carrying fragments of a history that no longer existed. But the universe remembers, and sometimes, when the need is great enough, it makes sure we remember too. In her classroom, Hae-Jin rubbed her temples as another headache began, and somewhere in the depths of her mind, Commander Jai Yun's hand stirred, ready to wake up once more. Because some battles never truly end. They just wait for the next round to begin. Hae-Jin woke up with a start. Her alarm hadn't gone off yet, but the dreams had been so vivid that she couldn't sleep anymore. She had seen battles in space again, but this time they felt more real. She remembered names, faces, and places she had never been to. She got up and walked to her mirror. The same face looked back at her, young, tired, with dark circles under her eyes. But for a moment, she thought she saw someone else, someone older, wearing a military uniform, with eyes that had seen too much war. Get it together, Hae-Jin told herself. They're just dreams. At school, things were different. Raul and Vix weren't teasing her today. Instead, they watched her from across the classroom with strange looks on their faces. They seemed almost afraid. Do-young noticed it too. What did you do to scare them? He whispered during their morning class. Nothing, Hae-Jin said. I just mentioned something about the Nexar Empire yesterday, and they. The headache hit her suddenly, stronger than ever before. Images flashed through her mind. A massive fleet of ships, a weird black sphere covered in glowing symbols, and a man who looked exactly like Do-young, but older, working in a science lab. Hae-Jin. Do-young touched her arm. Are you okay? I need to go to the bathroom, she managed to say. In the bathroom. Hae-Jin splashed cold water on her face. When she looked up, she gasped. In the mirror, she saw herself wearing a commander's uniform. The reflection spoke, but Hae-Jin's lips didn't move. Remember, the reflection said. It's time to remember. Hae-Jin blinked, and the vision was gone. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her tablet. She opened the galaxy's history database and typed, Nexar Empire. No results. She tried different spellings, different keywords. Nothing. According to every historical record, the Nexar Empire had never existed. But I remember it, she whispered. I remember fighting them. The bathroom door opened. Principal Kang walked in, her face serious. Miss Kim, she said, I think it's time we had a talk. Principal Kang's office was on the top floor of the school. One wall was made entirely of windows, showing the beautiful mix of human and alien architecture outside. The principal sat down, and gestured for He-Jin to do the same. "You've been having headaches," Principal Kang said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "And dreams. Dreams of space battles. Dreams of being someone else." The principal leaned forward. "Dreams of commanding a fleet against an empire that doesn't exist in any history book." He-Jin's heart was beating fast. "Who are you?" "I am like you," Principal Kang said. "A soul born twice. In my previous life, I was Admiral Sun, commander of Earth's Third Fleet. I fought alongside Commander Jai Yun-Han in the war that never was." "Jai Yun-Han," He-Jin repeated. The name felt right in her mouth, like she had said it thousands of times before. "Yes." Principal Kang smiled. "You're her, He-Jin. Or rather, you were her. The commander who saved the galaxy by erasing humanity's greatest enemy from history itself." He-Jin stood up suddenly. Another memory hit her, standing on a ship's bridge, giving orders to Admiral Sun, planning their final attack. "But how? Why can't I remember everything?" "The human mind isn't made to hold 2 lifetimes of memories," Principal Kang explained. "They come back slowly, to protect us from the shock. But they are coming back, aren't they?" He-Jin nodded. "And Du Young. I keep seeing him too, but different. Older, working on some kind of weapon." "Tai-Ho Lee," Principal Kang said. "Your chief scientist and closest friend." "Yes, he was reborn too. As were others. Even some who fought against us. Ral and Vix," He-Jin whispered. "They were Prince Raltek and Commander Vixterra of the Nexer Empire," Principal Kang confirmed. "They don't remember everything yet, but they're starting to. That's why they've been acting strange around you." He-Jin sat down again, her head spinning. "Why now? Why are we all remembering now?" Principal Kang's face grew serious. "Because something is coming, He-Jin. Something that might require us to remember who we were, who we can be again." The rest of the school day passed in a blur. He-Jin couldn't focus on her classes. Every room, every person seemed to trigger new memories. She remembered battles she had fought, orders she had given, friends she had lost. During lunch, she found Du Young in their usual spot in the garden. "Du Young," she said, sitting down. "Does the name Tai-Ho Lee mean anything to you?" He dropped his sandwich. How do you know that name?" "Because I remember you," He-Jin said. "Not just as Du Young. I remember you as Tai-Ho, the brilliant scientist who built the quantum weapon, who helped me save the galaxy." Du Young's eyes went wide. "The dreams, they're real. All those memories of working in a lab, building something impossible. All real," He-Jin said. "We lived different lives, Du Young. Lives that were erased when we changed history." They spent the lunch hour sharing memories as they came back. Du Young remembered the weapon's construction, the theories behind it, the fear and hope of those final days. He-Jin remembered being Commander Jai-Yun, remembered leading the fleet, remembered making the choice that changed everything. After school, they went to the city library together. They found old pictures of space battles that had supposedly never happened, ships that had never been built. But they remembered them all. "Look at this," Du Young said, pointing to a photo of an ancient ruin. "The quantum technology site on Titan, where we found the instructions." "Where you found them," He-Jin corrected. "You were the one who translated the symbols. And you were the one brave enough to use the weapon." Du Young looked at her. "You sacrificed everything to save everyone." He-Jin touched the photo. "I didn't know what would happen. I just knew we had to try." They were so focused on their research that they didn't notice Ral and Vix enter the library. The 2 alien students stood watching them for a long moment before approaching. "Commander," Ral said quietly. He-Jin looked up. In Ral's eyes, she saw recognition. She saw Prince Raltek of the Nexer Empire looking back at her. "You remember," she said. "Not everything," Vix added, "but enough. Enough to know what you did, what we all were." "Are you here for revenge?" Du Young asked, standing protectively near He-jin. Raul shook his head. "No, we're here because we need to talk about what's coming." "What do you mean?" He-jin asked. "There are rumors," Vix said. "Whispers from the outer colonies. Something is stirring in the dark spaces between stars. Something that feels like the Nexer Empire, but different. Worse." He-jin felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered Principal Kang's words about why they were remembering now. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Months, maybe," Raul said. "We came to warn you. And to offer our help." He-jin stood up. For a moment, she wasn't just a schoolgirl anymore. She was Commander Jae-yun Han again, facing a crisis that could threaten the galaxy. "Help?" she asked. "You want to help us. We remember what the Empire became," Vix said. "The pain it caused. The worlds it destroyed. We don't want that to happen again." "Neither do I," He-jin said. She looked at each of them. Du Young, her brilliant friend in 2 lifetimes. Raul and Vix, former enemies now offering alliance. "But this time, we do it differently. This time, we stop it before it starts." They all nodded. In that moment, they weren't just students anymore. They were warriors, scientists, leaders reborn, and they had work to do. As they left the library, He-jin felt another memory surface, but this one wasn't of war or battle. It was of the moment after she had used the weapon, when reality was changing around her. She had made a wish then, a hope sent out into the rewriting universe. She had wished for a chance to build peace instead of just ending war. Now, 200 years later, she had that chance, and this time she wouldn't be alone. The sun was setting over New Earth City, painting the sky in beautiful colors. He-jin looked at her friends, old and new, from this life and the last, and smiled. Some stories don't end. They just pause, waiting for the next chapter to begin. And their next chapter was just starting. 1 month had passed since He-jin discovered the truth about her past life. The school hallways felt different now. When she walked to class, she wasn't just He-jin Kim, the student anymore. She was also Commander Jae-yun Han, the hero who had saved the galaxy. But being a hero wasn't as simple as it used to be. "We need to tell more people," Du Young said during their lunch break. He, Raul, and Vix now sat together with He-jin every day, planning and sharing memories as they returned. "Tell them what?" He-jin asked. "That we're reborn souls from a war that never happened. That something dangerous is coming from deep space." "We have proof now," Raul said. His scales shifted to a thoughtful blue color. "The star maps I remembered led us to that hidden base on Mars. The weapons we found there. Weapons we're not supposed to know about," Vix added. "Technology that shouldn't exist in this timeline." He-jin looked at her friends. In the past month, they had changed from bullies and victims into a real team. Raul and Vix had apologized for their previous behavior, explaining how their partial memories had made them angry and confused. "Principal Kang says we're not the only ones," He-jin said. "There are others like us all over the galaxy. People who fought in the war, reborn into new lives. Some of them are remembering too. But not all of them are on our side," Du Young reminded them. "Some of the old Nexer leaders have been reborn too, and they might want to rebuild their empire." Before anyone could respond, the school's emergency alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed in the hallways, and Principal Kang's voice came over the speakers. "All students please report to the assembly hall immediately. This is not a drill." The assembly hall was huge, designed to hold students of all sizes from all species. He-jin and her friends found seats near the front. Principal Kang stood on the stage, her face serious. "I have received news from the Galactic Council," she announced. "A fleet of unknown ships has appeared at the edge of our solar system. They are not responding to communication attempts, and they are headed directly for Earth." Whispers filled the hall. He-jin felt her heart race as new memories surfaced. Memories of another fleet, long ago, that had threatened Earth. There's more, Principal Kang continued. The ships match no known design in our records. But some of you, she looked directly at He Jin, some of you might recognize them. A hologram appeared above the stage. The ships were massive, their hulls black with purple energy flowing through them. But they weren't exactly like the Nexer ships from He Jin's memories. These were different, somehow worse. Raul stood up suddenly. Those are harvester ships, he said, his voice shaking. The Nexer Empire found them in deep space, but we were too afraid to wake them. They're planet killers. How do you know this? Someone in the crowd asked. Because I was there, Raul said. In another life, I was Prince Raltek of the Nexer Empire. And these ships, they're what made us become conquerors. We thought if we didn't conquer the galaxy first, these things would. The hall erupted in chaos. Students were shouting, some in fear, others in disbelief. But He Jin noticed something strange. About a quarter of the students weren't surprised at all. They were sitting calmly, their eyes showing recognition. Principal Kang raised her hands for silence. Many of you are beginning to remember who you were. The war that never was. The sacrifices made to save us all. And now we need those memories more than ever. She pressed a button, and the wall behind her slid open. Inside was a familiar black sphere covered in glowing symbols. The quantum weapon, Du Young whispered. But how? Because I kept it safe, Principal Kang said. Hidden it away in case it was ever needed again. And now, He Jin, Commander, we need your help once more. He Jin stood up. As she walked to the stage, more memories flooded back. She remembered everything now. Every battle, every decision, every moment of her past life. I can't use the weapon again, she said. Last time, it took everything we had just to change one small part of history. And look what happened. The threat just found another way to reach us. Then what do we do? Vix asked. He Jin turned to face the crowd. We fight. Not like before. Not alone. This time, we fight together. Humans, Nexer, every species. We fight as one galaxy. She looked at her friends. Du Young, Tahoe, you're the brilliant scientist who built impossible things. Raul, Vix, you know these ships better than anyone. Principal Kang, you have connections across the galaxy. And me, she smiled. I know how to lead. But you're just kids, someone in the crowd shouted. No, Principal Kang said. They are old souls in young bodies, warriors and leaders reborn. And they're not alone. All across the hall, students were standing up. He Jin recognized the look in their eyes. They were remembering too. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, tacticians, all reborn into new lives. The harvesters will reach Earth in 3 days, Principal Kang announced. We have that long to prepare, to remember, to become who we once were while keeping who we are now. He Jin walked to the quantum weapon and placed her hand on it. She didn't need to use it to change reality this time. Its presence was enough. A reminder that impossible things were possible. In my past life, she said, I led us to victory by erasing our enemy from history. But that just moved the problem. This time, we solve it for real. This time, we build something better than victory. She looked at each of her friends. Du Young, can you adapt the quantum weapons technology to defend against their ships? He nodded. With Raul's knowledge of their weaknesses, yes. Vix, can you help train pilots to fight them? Already planning the simulations, Vix said, her 4 eyes gleaming. And Raul? He Jin smiled at her former bully, now a trusted ally. Ready to help save the galaxy instead of conquering it. Raul's scales turned a determined gold color. Ready, Commander. Over the next 3 days, New Earth International School became a command center. Students who remembered their past lives trained those who didn't. Du Young and his team worked on weapons and shields. Vix ran combat simulations. Raul shared everything he knew about the harvester ships. He Jin coordinated it all, growing more confident with each passing hour. She was still herself, still the girl who had faced bullies and self-doubt, but now she was more. She was a leader who had learned from both victory and sacrifice. On the morning of the third day, they gathered on the school's roof. The sky was clear, but they could see the faint shapes of the harvester ships approaching Earth. Status report. He-Jin ordered, just like she had 200 years ago. Defense systems ready, Du-Young said. Every ship in the fleet is equipped with quantum shields. Pilots trained and ready, Vix added. They're not as experienced as they were in their past lives, but they remember enough. Ground forces prepared, Raoul reported. And we have support from every colony in the system. He-Jin looked at her team. Teenagers with ancient souls, students becoming soldiers again. But this time was different. This time they weren't fighting out of fear or hatred. They were fighting to protect, to build, to make something better than what had come before. 200 years ago, she said, I made a choice that changed everything. I erased an empire to save us all. But running from our problems just means finding new ones. She touched the quantum weapon, now modified into a shield generator. This time, we face them. This time, we show them that humanity, that all of us are stronger together than apart. Principal Kang handed her a commander's uniform, not the old Earth Fleet design, but a new one. One that represented all species, all worlds. Ready for your first battle of this lifetime, Commander? She asked. He-Jin put on the uniform. It felt right, like coming home to a place she'd never been. Not a battle, she said. A beginning. The harvester ships entered Earth's orbit, their weapons charging. But they found something they didn't expect. A galaxy united, remembering its strength, ready to write a new chapter in its history. He-Jin Kim stood with her friends, both old and new. She was no longer the girl who endured taunts from her classmates. She was no longer just the commander who had toppled empires. She was both, and she was more. She was the future. All ships, all stations, she commanded, her voice strong and clear. Commence Operation New Dawn. The quantum shields activated, filling the sky with beautiful light. Earth's combined fleet rose to meet the threat. And in classrooms across the galaxy, more students were remembering, preparing, joining the fight. This was how it should be, He-Jin thought. Not erasing the past, but learning from it. Not fighting alone, but standing together. The final battle was about to begin. But this time, it wasn't an ending. It was a new story, waiting to be written. By all of them. Together.